Coach Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation. We're joined by Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner. Chief Buckner, how you doing?
Doing good, sir. Thank you for having me.
So glad you could be a part of the conversation. Chief, let's talk about some issues going on within the Syracuse Police Department. Right now, this department is being sued by one of your officers alleging racial discrimination and bias. What is your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to it is, that it certainly is disappointing to have, that kind of incident going on within the police department. But it is a part of the business, and it's certainly not new territory for me. So we will, do our due diligence and allow due process to take place. My goal is to make sure that all parties have an opportunity to be heard, and that we get to to the other side of this, both as an agency and a community.
This is Officer Brandon Hanks, who's obviously gotten some notoriety for being the kind of police officer that the Syracuse Police Department would love to have more of.
Certainly. I mean, he has built a public profile for the professional work that he has been doing. Being a son of Syracuse, went to the Syracuse school system, played college here, basketball here in Central New York, too, I believe, grew up in the city, family in the city, and came back to the community. So he certainly has earned, the reputation that he has publicly.
I know that there are some limits to what you can discuss, but he basically says that that very reputation is what is preventing him from advancing in the police department. What can you say about that?
Well, there's a lot that's been said so far by his attorneys. So far, we haven't heard anything directly from Brandon Hanks, as you would expect not to hear from him once you're being represented. Thus far, we have the allegations that have been made. At the appropriate time and venue, the city will have its opportunity to say its piece, and all of the officers involved. And then we can take a look at the facts and to see what we learn from that. What are our opportunities for improvement? What's true, what's not true, or what are things that we need to do differently or to do better. And then in some cases is to just also make sure that we have a clear understanding of what has occurred, and given the significance of this in our community, I certainly will do my part to make sure that we're transparent about the process and the outcomes of this with the community and the police department.
And in addition to that, there's allegations of retaliation because of the lawsuit that has been brought. What do you say to that?
Well, we've already put out a message concerning that. That is not factual. The case that we had, where the issues that were alleged against Officer Hanks being investigated were part of an ongoing internal investigation. The discipline that was recommended for that predated the notice of claim that was filed by Officer Hanks and his legal team. I understand how that looks to the community, that someone would say, that they learn after the fact when he's actually served that discipline, that someone would say, well, it looks retaliatory in nature. We can't control how something looks, but we also can't step away from an internal process that we have, and we had to conclude that process, and that's exactly what we did. We certainly believe that once all the facts are known, that many of the things that are rumor or hearsay, hearsay, she said, or barbershop talk, that we will be able to put some clarity to some of these things.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about all of this, Chief, is we don't hear of any sort of disciplinary actions involving officers at all. Usually, from my perception, now you correct me if I'm wrong, usually it's a process that's handled internally, and the public, I mean, this is what we're, the Citizen Review Board, for example, trying to get, well, what actually happened. Is this unusual that we are even, how unusual, or is this typical that we're actually even knowing that an officer has been disciplined for something?
It's not unusual under my administration. I've spoken about discipline that has been given to specific officers at the podium. If you remember the case where the police officer slapped an individual upside the head, we talked about at the podium. This case where the discipline was made public was done by his legal team. That was not done by the city of Syracuse, and we responded to that. But as far as discipline being publicly discussed, we've had cases that had significant, I would say, illumination in the community to where we had spoke on those publicly. So that certainly is not new for this administration.
Talking with Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner about some issues in the department. Now, let's look, aside from the allegations being made by this officer, how is the police department, Chief Buckner, under your administration, looking at its own processes and procedure, independent of this, to ensure that these allegations brought forward are an aberration, or however you want to call it, as this investigation goes forward? Or let me ask it a different way. Is there racism within the Syracuse Police Department?
The Syracuse Police Department is a microcosm of society. There's racism in the media company that you work for. Of course, there's racism that occurs in the Syracuse Police Department. Do I believe that this is a case where racism played a part in it? So far, I don't have anything that leads me to believe that. That there are things that have occurred in our process that we certainly need to look at procedurally, as you have highlighted, because the complaint that Officer Hanks has made is not a new complaint from our officers, specifically speaking about feeling like that there's not a fair process to get into small team specialty units. That is accusations that I've had in 3 states in 3 different departments, because it's a small unit, limited opportunities to get there, and all races and both genders complain about feeling like that those processes are not fair, or that you have to be a member of a country club in order to get in there. However, it is unique in that the kinds of things that were alleged against Officer Hanks as a part of that application process is certainly unique.
Police Chief Buckner, is it personally a setback when, as in a police chief who happens to be African American, that allegations of racial discrimination come forward, when the perception is this is supposed to change when you have a Black police chief?
Well, that's one of the I guess the burdens that Black chiefs carry. You have an expectation of me that you didn't put on my white counterparts. So the problems that you're seeing in our city and in our police agency, why would you think that I could wave a magic wand and that you didn't expect my white counterpart to wave that magic wand? So the same issues that they deal with, I deal with. Allegations of racism, allegations of discrimination, allegations of unfair treatment, a lack of diversity. These are not new things for the Syracuse Police Department. And for someone who has been here at 2.5 years, when you've been complaining about this and under a consent decree for over 40 years, what would make any reasonable, objective person think that Kenton Buckner could fix that in 2.5 years?
But there was an expectation that Kenton Buckner could fix it.
Yes, and Kenton Buckner certainly has to carry the baton for my leg of the race. And so it's my job to deal with these things, but to say that because you're an African-American chief that you're going to fix all of the problems that face our police departments, if that were the silver bullet, don't you think every city in America would have a Black chief?
Well, here's what I do know. There is expectations in the community that there would be a different level of understanding, that the follow through would be different, that the issues that are brought forward would be dealt with, and that they would be pursued under a leadership of someone who would have affinity for some of these issues. As someone who has come up through many of these same communities where these issues are ever present.
Well, so far you only have allegations that has not occurred in this case. Again, you have not heard all of the facts. You have not heard our response to this case. You have not seen all of the evidence. You have not seen the investigation that we conducted, nor the outcome of that investigation. So for us to be basically right now defending ourselves against allegations is tough to do when your legal representation gives you very limited opportunity to speak on those things publicly. But again, there's nothing new that's being alleged here today about some of the things historically that have been said about this police department. You just happen to have a black face that's on the face of it for now, but you also had that for the 9 years that preceded me. But our job is to make sure that we have a process that's fair for our officers. I understand the full gamut of why Officer Hanks feels the way that he feels. I won't necessarily agree with every conclusion that he has come to as a result of the incident, but I certainly understand how and why he feels the way he feels.
So where do we then, in this context, Chief Buckner, because this is a platform, obviously this is inspiration for the nation, so we want to talk about the solutions, right, going forward, and then ask you about some of the other issues going on in our community vis-a-vis crime and the ways in which we're seeing younger and younger people being a party to this crime. Let's talk about solutions, though. Okay, so these allegations being made, this investigation being done. What then, as a police department, as a sworn officers, and what about the leadership and culture of the organization? What are the things that you can say to the community to assure them that this is not acceptable if it is happening, not saying that it is, and that there will always be that there is no tolerance for this?
Well, we have no tolerance for any kind of mistreating, discrimination, prejudice, bias against our employees, each other, and our interaction with the community. The thing that I would say to the public is allow due process to take place. Media outlets, people in the community, I will stop multiple times this weekend to talk about the case that everyone is talking about. We have due process for a reason. And everyone wants an answer today about something that they're feeling very, very emotional about. Unfortunately, that's not the way the process works. So first of all, we need to do is we need to get the facts.
Get the facts.
That's the first thing. Once we gather the facts, then we'll come back and take a look at what this police department did in response to what we know. And then we can talk about some of the things as to how we move forward from there.
Chief, the question that the community has, and you know this, and I'm only speaking from and you and I, we've talked, and we speak frequently. It's whether they can trust the process. That's really the question, right? And historically, that's been the question. Can the process be trusted?
You have more transparency today than you've had for a very, very long time. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on, specifically when there's this kind of public interest in the case, is the value of transparency. So we will do that at the appropriate time and venue. And just because someone doesn't agree with the outcome of a case doesn't mean that we're not worthy of trust.
Sure.
Trust does not imply that you get your desired outcome. Trust is that you learn the facts, the appropriate decisions were taken, and then we're taking the appropriate measures to ensure if something occurred that should not have occurred, that those kinds of things don't happen again. But trust is a two-way street, because we use trust as an acronym: teamwork, respect, understanding, service, and transparency. At the end of this process, we think that you will say that we've lived up to what we believe trust means in our community.
And I appreciate you coming on to talk openly about this issue. What do you hope that this represents to the community?
As far as the conversation?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, some information is better than no information, and it's certainly better than bad information. Right now, people are very, very emotional about a son of Syracuse who was alleged some things that have occurred to him that has many people in their feelings. I understand that. I certainly would not want any of my officers to feel like that they have been mistreated, and certainly not one that has been a model police officer as it relates to police and community interaction. But I still would ask the public, as I said from day one when we started this, allow due process to take place.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get the facts before we start making any kind of broad brushing judgment or conclusions about something where we only have right now allegations.
What was your take then on an ex-police chief saying that this is an example of leadership being out of touch in the community? How do you respond to former Syracuse Chief Lee Hunt making those allegations?
Given Lee Hunt's past and some of the decisions that he's made as a leader, I gave it no thought.
Period. Can you say more about that?
I don't. Your viewing audience is very, very intelligent, and they can go and look Lee Hunt up for themselves, and they will know why that I gave that no thought as to what Lee Hunt thinks about this police department.
What I'm hearing you say is that it's not a credible messenger, is what I'm hearing you say.
Very much so.
Okay. Chief, from the standpoint now, again, you were in the community last weekend. You I would say you're an imposing person. You're tall. And a lot of people had a lot to say to you. What's the reassurance for them, not only about this incident, but now the concern about what's happening with youth and what you need from them and what you need to understand about this cycle of violence that has us praying, that has us trying to figure out what is going on, because it's at a point now, Chief, it's something that we haven't seen in Syracuse around the age of the perpetrators, right? Alleged perpetrators, right? And having, a pastor shot at these are not the police issues. I'm just saying, from your vantage point, what is going on right now in this community? Is there something we're missing about the age of perpetrators and the fact that a pastor at a hospital could also be shot while trying to help someone who was also shot?
Well, I'm not sure as to what happened there at the hospital when the pastor was walking into there. Preliminarily, it looks like it could have been a bullet that traveled from an unknown location, which is certainly not something that's comforting, that grazed him. That certainly is disturbing on any level when you think about that. We have ShotSpotter in this city for a reason. It's because we have too many incidents of shots fired in our city. When we talk about young people and the things that they're facing, where they're both suspect and victims of crime, and getting younger and younger in our community, the first thing I would tell you is that many of the things that frustrate us about the quality of life in our community, specifically our Black and brown communities where the violence is disproportionately occurring, are social issues. Long before crime comes to the surface, many things have broken down before we see them committing crime. The problem is you're bringing those social issues to the doorstep of the police department. And if we haven't learned over the past 100 years, that does not work. Mm-hmm. We're not equipped, nor are we designed to deal with that. There are three primary trajectories that I believe that determine an individual's path: family, church, and education. Black and brown community, all of those pillars in many cases are fractured, or in some cases broken, disconnected from that. Those are not police issues. Those are social issues. Prevention, intervention should occur in the community. Police have a role, but we should not be the driving force behind that. Much of our model is built to apprehend individuals responsible for committing crime, Prevention is preferred, that we can prevent them from doing it in the first place. But primary prevention and intervention starts in the home. It starts in the school system. It starts in the church. It starts with building value systems. And when those things are not in place, we find ourselves standing around frustrated as to who's responsible for fixing this. Well, I can tell you who is not primarily responsible for fixing that: the police. You've asked us to do that, and you've been frustrated with it for as long as you can remember about the crimes that are going on in urban communities. Think about this. Now, you're hearing people say that, that this is kind of a community health issue,
right?
When you look at the level of violence.
Do we mental health issue?
I'm sorry?
Do you said community health issue, or are you including mental health in that?
Mental health is included in that.
Yeah.
But we should look at it like we would like a pandemic, almost similarly. But when you talk about how it's impacting people, what other demographic in this country, and I'll tell you the answer, there's none. The leading cause of death, 15 to 34, is homicide.
Right. That's the African
That's
American.
not a police problem.
Yeah.
Not diabetes, not high blood pressure, not cholesterol. Getting murdered is the leading cause of death
in the Black community.
We're talking about
the Black community.
We're talking about nationally. This is nationally.
In the Black community.
In Black males.
Males, yes, Black males.
Leading cause of death for Black males, 15 to 34, is their murder. You need 20 other people on this call to talk about that. You're talking to the police chief. That's the problem. We bring that question to the police. What do you think the police are going to do about 15 to 34 leading cause of death is murder?
What people want the police to do is take some of the budget that they have and allocate it to some of those very things that you talk about. That's what this whole funding. Now, there's two issues there, but let's talk about that. Is the police willing to give up some of their money to do some of those things?
Well, that's people who don't understand a budget. First of all, 85% of a budget, they see $50 million and they say, well, Kenton Buckner is over there driving a Bentley and they're over there eating steak and shrimp every day off of that budget. 85% of that $50 million is salaries, benefits, and pension contribution. But now you got 10 to 12% left as operating expense in a city of 145,000 people, 30% poverty, that you're asking me to run a police department with. So you tell me what you don't want us to do if we give you the money that you're asking for representing the community. What do you not want us to do to give you the money to do that?
Well, and I guess the other piece of that is, and aren't you understaffed as an office? You're not even fully staffed at this point.
We're not fully staffed. We're authorized for 425. Today we sit at 408, but 39 of those individuals are in the police academy. So you might as well say that they don't exist at this time. They don't graduate until the second week of December.
So we're not going to be fully staffed and that 408 includes
we won't be fully staffed then, because when those individuals graduate, we'll have 40 or maybe 50 people that have retired or resigned or transferred by the time we get started for our next class. So you're saying to the community, what don't you want us to do so we can fund other things in the community? Is that what I'm hearing you say? You're going to take money from the police department. That's what some people are saying. That's what some people are saying. It sounds simple. Sounds real simple. Well, and actually what they're saying is defund the police is what they're saying. Some of them are saying that. Well, anyone saying that is foolish. Let's just put that on the record. Defund the police is foolish. You have 11-month-old babies getting killed in the back seats of cars, and you're sitting up here talking about the silly stuff of defund the police. Go tell that to the people who are laying on the floor in their homes with bullets coming through the door that we need more social workers. You go tell them that. I don't feel comfortable telling them that. Get those individuals. But don't we need more social workers though? Well, I think the community needs to decide on that. I think that there are many things that a social worker, mental health professional substance abuse counselor can do to be able to help us with this reimagined policing. We're all for that. We can give you a list of things that we would like to get out of the business and say, let George Kilpatrick and his friends, that you're now responsible for this. And then we can do a radio show on George Kilpatrick on how you're progressing with those issues that we've given you.
That would be great, although I'm not trying to be a police officer.
No, don't try. I didn't say police. I'm talking about
I'm not trying to be a police officer. I'm
no,
trying
you're on
to
the social side of this issue, though, George.
No,
so I want to give you those things.
No.
Give them to you.
Let's be clear. I'm trying to amplify the voices of the community who are bringing these concerns forward. I'm not, that's not my argument about defunding the police. That's just not my argument. But I wanted to hear your perspective on those who say, can we reallocate resources to, because what people are saying, Chief, is that there are things that the police purchase that are, I mean, you always hear this, the first thing that comes to mind is when people talk about armored vehicles and tanks and militarized and all of these things. That's what we hear people
George,
say.
Are you prior military, George? I don't know if you were or not.
I am not.
You're not, okay. Assault rifles, like an AR-15.
Right.
Those kind of, you're familiar with those kinds of weapons?
I am.
A military grade weapon, many of our criminals have. Do we agree so far?
We do.
If you were to shoot that style of weapon through a police vehicle, these Ford SUVs that we have, would you agree that that would go straight through that vehicle?
I would agree.
Then what kind of fool would pull up to conduct a search warrant in front of someone's house that you believe that they have weapons of that magnitude? Who would pull up in a non-military grade vehicle to be able to stop that? What fool would do that? I tell you what, the people that are saying that we should not have that vehicle, tell them go execute the warrant.
So I'm sensing that there's a lot of frustration here about what policing is and what vehicles and what equipment and artillery is needed. How do we get the disconnect then between what people perceive as excessive militarized equipment versus what you say you need to do your job? How do we get to this?
Well, first of all, I would push back with you on who people are, because I don't believe the silent majority believe what you're saying that people say. The silent majority don't believe that.
Okay, let's say it this way. You're right. There's probably a silent majority who isn't speaking, but what we hear more of is the latter. So so that's the perception. So if that's not the truth, then how do we get past that perception?
Well, I don't think that reasonable people believe that police can operate without a certain level of specialty kind of equipment. I think the general audience gets that. I don't think that reasonable people who can look at an issue, pros and cons, good and bad, and I think that they will come to the conclusion that given what we're asked to encounter, that we can't walk in there with shirt and ties on to bring individuals who are drug and gang members out of a house when we're conducting a search warrant. That's not the way the world works. I think the majority of your audience understands that. There's going to be a small group of individuals, often loud, which sometimes can appear to be synonymous with accurate, not true, who are going to say, well, they're getting those vehicles because they are taking over our communities. We're being over-policed. They are declaring martial law on our neighborhoods, or that we shouldn't have those vehicles because they're trying to incite a riot. Now, I'm certainly not naive to believe that police in some instances have used that equipment in situations where it probably was not warranted, or maybe the show of force was excessive. We try to be mindful of that and make sure that we have the appropriate procedures and policies in place that we don't do that. But you're always going to see me push back on anything that I believe approaches officer safety, because I'm not interested in being popular. I don't want everybody to agree with everything that I'm saying. But if I think that you're encroaching upon officer safety, you're going to get energy from me, because I'm the one that has to hand that folding flag to a family member. And I'm not interested in that. So when I see these kinds of questions or people pushing in these areas, you're going to get energy back from me, because that's part of my responsibility to protect the people who are out there risking their lives for our citizens.
So where do we go from here, Chief? Right? Because whether this energy that you're bringing is fair or not, and it's your right to have that energy, there is still a perception in the community about what's happening here and whether or not we have a police force we can trust, officers we can trust, and that there is a process we can trust, and that just the things that you describe as being police issues versus social issues, because I think it's important. I don't want to what do you call it, minimize the three pillars you talked about: family, church, family, faith, and education, and how that's fractured. And that what I'm going to rephrase this or reiterate, you say that those are not police issues, right? So then what do we do? So now the police, a couple of things I understand, but you're trying to help, right? You got this police athletic league and police athletic and activities league. You're trying to at least make some inroads into that, and that the officers are going to be involved. So where do we go from here, Chief, to move forward? I want some energy from you on this.
Well, first of all, I would really like to define who is we. You said, where do we go from here?
Well, I'll tell you who we is. Who we is.
Who's going to be at the table with us?
Right. Okay. So we as a community, largely, right, as a Black community, as a community in general, as a collective, how do we work in partnership as community or people who live and or work in the city of Syracuse and our relationship with law enforcement? How do we move forward?
Well, we're already moving forward. And we just had the police reform initiative that was community driven, community inclusive. We have a document in which we're working from. We have a committee that's been established in order to move us forward on that, to ensure that we are doing the things that we said that we're going to do. Where the police department is going through an accreditation process to whereby we will go from roughly 100 or so standards to 400 standards that we will be judged by as far as what a professional organization is supposed to look like. We continue to incrementally improve our diversity hiring and increasing our workforce. We've changed our training model. We're having more training hours. We have a variety of different things that we're trained on. We're also overhauling our policies from top to bottom that we have in the police department that govern how we do business. We have a number of different issues that we have as far as working with the public. We have a citizens advisory group that we have one in each of the three divisions. We have the cadet program that we're getting ready to start growing our own fruit with the recruits. We have the POW program that we have. There's another constructive activity.
What's POW?
POW is Police Athletic League.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to work with the kids. And then we're in the process of trying to put together a youth citizens police academy. Those are kind of a fraction of the things that we're doing. And we do a lot every day, which is why we tell people to go to our website, look at our social media footprint. There are a lot of people who are uninformed about the things that the police department is doing. But the problem is the police department is the only one presenting a report card. What are you doing? Well, let me see your diversity numbers. Let me see your crime numbers. Let me see what you're doing with your training hours and how many hours do you have on de-escalation. Well, you say that other people need to be at the table. Have you seen their report card?
When you see, you mean other law enforcement entities
you think
within
should be engaged in this social project from a community effort? Are you asking to see their report card? That's a question. That's not rhetorical. That's a question for you. Are you asking those entities, well, where are you on this initiative to raise our graduation rate? Where are you on this initiative to stop the dropout rate? Where are we on getting kids who have been identified with mental health issues some sort of a path to be able to address those issues? Where are we on substance abuse? Where are we on reducing poverty from 30% to let's try to get to 20%? Where are those report cards?
Right.
My frustration is I stay in the room with having to bring forward what we're doing. Where are the other report cards?
So the next time we have a conversation, you would like to see some other report cards, is what I'm hearing you say.
What I would like to see is something beyond the conversation. I've been doing this for 28 years, George. I'm tired of meetings and conversation.
Okay.
You got kids out here getting murdered, and we're still conversating.
Mm.
What happens after the meeting?
Yeah, what does happen? Well, let me ask you
Yeah.
this. In your experience, what has been happening after the meeting?
I think that people go to the meeting, had a great time talking about the things that they were passionate about. But if you say, let's meet this week to where we're going to do some mentoring and tutoring with kids on math and science, you'll get that handful of individuals who are work-minded, who are real warriors about trying to move a needle. You'll get that core group of people, but you really don't see a lot of the folks who were a part of the illuminating the issue and yelling and the finger pointing. Very seldom do you see that group involved in the work. The work. You're a church man. I guarantee you, if you ask your pastor, let's say you got 500 members or 1,000 members of Bethany, I bet you there's 25 he can count on.
Right.
Same thing in our community. This is too broad for a few people to be responsible for doing this heavy lift.
All right, Chief Buckner. So the responsibility then, you basically putting it back on us as a community. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, I said the police have a role. If you play your tape back, I said the police have a role in this, but we should not be the tip of the spear on these social issues. That's not what we were designed for. Prevention, intervention primarily needs to be a community role to address those issues.
And you're not, just as some, whoever they are may not be satisfied with the progress that the police are making. You're saying you're not satisfied with the efforts of us handling as a community these social, emotional, educational issues either. That's what I'm hearing you say. Did I hear that right?
I'm not satisfied with those things, but I would also agree that the police department continues and will always be in a position of opportunity for improvement. So by no means are we where we want to be, but I will certainly tell you that we're not where we used to be either. So I feel good about the progress that we made, but there's certainly no one sitting around over here at 511 State Street patting ourselves on the back when we have the kind of things that are going on outside our window.
Real quick, Eric Adams winning the mayoral primary, Democratic mayoral primary in New York as an ex-cop. A lot of people are saying that is significant in that it shows kind of what you're saying, that there's a silent majority. Was that something that you watched at all and said, this means something beyond what's happening in New York?
When you are responsible for public safety in Syracuse, you have very little time to worry about other people's business. I wish that gentleman the best of luck in what he's taking on. It's a monumental task for New York City. And I certainly will keep him in prayer. I always want to see brothers succeed. But to be honest with you, I have not given that a lot of review or looking in to that issue because I'm up to my ears and eyeballs in my stuff.
He's an ex-cop is basically the connection to you.
Yeah, but I really haven't even given it any thought, and I didn't even know he was an ex-cop, to tell you how disconnected I am from that.
Yeah, that was the significance of that. All right, well, listen, Chief Buckner, you got some energy. Any more energy you want to put on this conversation, bro?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to come on here. You are a trusted member of our community, and people bring you things for a reason, and you're in certain circles for a reason. So you certainly do a great job of balancing, of bringing the issue issues forward, as well as having a comprehensive kind of response to those issues. Again, you're just my frustration is that I want to get beyond the meetings, and I want to see more people on the field of play to help with these issues, or we will continue to be frustrated.
Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner joining us on Inspiration for the Nation. For people who don't want to sit on the sidelines, is there a way to, should they be calling you? Who should they be calling?
They should be calling their church. They should be calling school system. They should be looking at nonprofits that are evidence-based, that are doing really, really good work in the community, to see where they can volunteer for that, where they may be able to help raise money for those issues. We can't do any of those things without funding. And then also just start in your home first. Make sure that that your kids are not part of the problem for the things that we're seeing out here. And then if you can help a neighbor's kid down the street, then God bless you for that.
Syracuse Police Chief, Inspiration for the Nation. Thank you, Doc. Maybe one day you'll get your doctorate, but Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner, thank you so much.
Thank you, George.